I'm in chains, you're in chains too. Our uniforms and you are uniforms too. I'm a prisoner, you're a prisoner too, Mr. Jailer.
Having just a few minutes ago sworn by the Holy Book, I intend to keep my oath and serve as president to all Nigerians. I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody.
Since after those controversial words of his inaugural speech, President Muhammadu Buhari's avowed determination and renewed vigor to fight corruption had been well received and commended by Nigerians, as it portends a new hope that the country will eventually rid itself of its biggest problem, corruption. However, 1 year since the government started with its anti-corruption crusade, the implementation of that ideal has been characterized by human rights violations that is interpreted by the public as personal vendettas executed by totally disrespecting the rule of law with an arrogance that has cast a dark patch on the fight against corruption. Since Mr. Buhari came to power last May, a huge number of prominent members of the former ruling People's Democratic Party, PDP, have been arrested, tortured, and imprisoned without charge. President Buhari's anti-corruption crusade is now accused of being so lopsided that it clearly comes across to the public as just an excuse for checkmating and decimating the opposition. Critics say that while the president is rounding up major officials of the PDP for using public funds to finance its 2015 election campaign, he had been silent on disclosing where he and the APC obtained the money to finance his own very expensive election campaign. It is further alleged that several state governors emptied the coffers of their states illegally to bankroll Buhari's election, providing private jets and funds with which the president enjoyed his campaign across the length and breadth of Nigeria. So far, these notorious governors, who are mostly APC members, have been exempted from Buhari's anti-corruption persecution. Instead, they have been rewarded with juicy appointments as ministers of super-ministries and given both private and official bailouts. Western officials are now raising concerns that the government of the country's recently elected leader is persecuting political opponents in the guise of fighting corruption. A prominent example was the vendetta against former National Security Advisor Colonel Sambo Dasuki, retired. President Buhari had placed Dasuki under house arrest, confiscated his passport, charged him with unlawful possession of firearms and money laundering violations, and sought a secret trial to prevent independent scrutiny. A retired Major General himself, Mr. Buhari previously headed a brutal military dictatorship following a coup in December 1983, which lasted until he was overthrown by another coup in 1985. It is presumed that Dasuki's involvement in the coup that sacked the Buhari junta in 1985 may account for the president's desperation to nail Dasuki at all costs. Another major victim of persecution was the party's official spokesperson, Olisa Metu. The EFCC, obviously acting on instruction from the presidency, denied Metu bail by a frivolous splitting of charges in a desperate move to keep him out of circulation. Amnesty International, as well as other international and local human rights bodies, had warned of a sharp increase in the number of unlawful detentions, use of torture, and ill treatment to suspects without trials in Nigeria. According to these international human rights organizations, since the beginning of this year, over 100 cases of human rights violations have been recorded to have been allegedly carried out by security organs in the Muhammadu Buhari's administration, with most of the victims being members of the opposition political party. Most of these violations, they say, have been sanctioned by the presidency before being carried out by the government-controlled Economic and Financial Crime Commission, EFCC.
We are determined to fight this fight to finish.
Critics say the over 60 arrests of members of the previous regime portrays the anti-corruption war as politically driven, mostly targeting the members of PDP, the leading opposition party, and especially former aides and relations of Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. The ordeal of the former president's cousin, Barrister Azibaola Robert, who is the managing director of a leading indigenous construction firm, Kakatar Engineering Limited, is a prominent case of persecution under Buhari's regime. Azibaola was arrested and detained along with his wife on Wednesday the 23rd of March 2016 as he honored an invitation by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. Though his wife was released days later, Azibaola had been kept in detention even as at the time of producing this report, nearly 60 days after, and still without a formal charge. According to his brother, Dr. Faith Robert, a medical doctor with a PhD in genetic engineering, who teaches molecular biology at the Niger Delta University, Barrister Azibaola's ordeal began on Monday the 21st of March when a team of heavily armed policemen, accompanied by EFCC officials, stormed their residence in the dark of night, harassing Azibaola's wife and their 3 young children when they could not find Azibaola at home.
They traumatized the young wife and the young kids. They put her through so much ordeal, demanding that, she produce her husband immediately. And mind you, this was in the dead of the night. This was maybe about 9-10 p.m. at night. And, they were banging on the door that she must open the door, she must produce her husband. All the kids, the young kids, she's got 3 young daughters, they were all terrified and traumatized. Eventually, my brother showed up at about 11 or thereabout. And, he was made known of what had transpired. So immediately, he decided that he was going to go to the office since they were looking for him. So he went there that night.
Surprisingly, in a twist that can be likened to a cat-and-mouse game, the EFCC showed no further interest in arresting Dr. Azibaola that night, or even the day after.
He went there and then they told him to come back the next day. So, he was wondering, why did you have to, subject my family to this level of trauma, that you needed to see me? And I eventually have showed up, and then you're telling me that I should come the next day. Why didn't you wait for the next day before, asking me to come? And mind you, he had not been invited officially, to show up at EFCC's office. So this was a storm. They just stormed his house without any notice, without any invitation whatsoever.
But on Wednesday, the 23rd of March, Barrister Azibaola Robert was detained along with his wife when he showed up as he was asked to by the EFCC.
He pleaded that, if they're looking for him, he's there with them. So at least, they should let the wife go. And so eventually, grudgingly, they decided to release the wife late at night. They released her, but they held him. The next day, they invited his executive director project, Mr. Dakoro Atupa. So he came on the 24th, and then they held him.
Dr. Faith Robert submitted that from Wednesday the 23rd of March, Azibaola was detained unlawfully, ill-treated, tortured physically and emotionally. He was denied access to his lawyer and was not allowed to be visited by family. Round the clock, he was grilled with random questions without a clear charge to why he was arrested.
His lawyer tried to find out exactly why they are holding him. They wouldn't volunteer any information as to why they are holding him.
It may seem Barrister Robert Azibaola's case is rather special to the EFCC because of his close relationship with former President Goodluck Jonathan.
The former president is my cousin. Not only that, my immediate older brother, is very close to him. Therefore, the thing that my brother is key, being a close confidant to the former president, he has the requisite information, that will be required to nail the former president, and you must manufacture evidence, that they will need to nail the former president.
While the chairman of the EFCC, Ibrahim Magu, maintains that former President Jonathan may be arrested if found to have authorized the use of public funds to finance the People's Democratic Party, PDP, in the bid to retain his presidency During the 2015 general election, the chairman admitted that the commission is unable to arrest him because no document has been traced to the former president giving approval for the disbursement of public funds. All approvals by the former president, he said, were for legitimate government purposes and none for political purposes. Yet, his brother Azibaola was arrested.
When they detained him for hours on end in an underground cell, without ventilation, without lightning, without sunlight, mostly solitary detention. He's not allowed to even mix with the other, detainees. And they grill him for hours, non-stop, from morning till night. They ask him repeatedly, you have to say something. They had working on a theory that his company, because one of his companies is called OnePlus, okay, they somehow managed to come up with a hypothesis that OnePlus actually signifies the former president. One is number one, former president plus. So they were questioning him about, the ownership of the company, the directors, whether he was actually fronting, for the former president. And clearly, if they had bothered to go to the Corporate Affairs Commission, they will have seen that this company was incorporated way before the former president even became president. And the board of directors are clearly spelled out in the CAC forms and documents.
The EFCC had Mr. Azibaola in their radar. For about 9 months, they had covertly followed and investigated him and found nothing that implicates him or the former president. Yet, on that day of the 23rd March 2016, they threw caution away and arrested him.
On the 29th of March, they told us that they had given him an administrative bail. They were asking for 2 directors in the federal ministry that must have landed properties in the highbrow districts of Maitama and Asokoro. Okay, they must also produce original certificate of occupancy for those properties, and each one of them must produce a 250 million naira bond. Therefore, what this translates to is that for my brother and his colleague, they have to have 4 properties, that's 4 directors, with properties in either Maitama and Asokoro, with original CFO and a bond of 1 billion. These conditions were given because they didn't want to release him. So they want to give the impression that they're actually giving him bail. That any director that comes with a property in Maitama or Asokoro and with a 250 million naira bond will be immediately arrested.
With such crude and disingenuous tactics, the EFCC continues to hound its suspects, leaving them only the one alternative of seeking fairness in the ambits of the judiciary.
We went to court to enforce his fundamental human rights. And on the 7th of April, the High Court in Abuja ruled that he's been unlawfully detained, and therefore he be released on bail. So the court granted him bail under certain terms. We met those terms, and then we went back to the court that, the terms that you set for his bail, we have met them. The court now issued a production warrant that he and his colleague be brought to court, so that court, because court had already given them bail, court can free them. So when we got the bail from the court, we served it on EFCC, and they bluntly disobeyed the court order.
Upon winning the last general election, President Buhari pledged to abide by the rule of law, a commitment he recently reaffirmed in a speech he made at a Commonwealth event, where he added that he has also instructed security agencies to respect human rights and the rule of law while carrying out their duties.
Why will you even disobey the order of a court? The court says, release this man. You disobey the order. Then you will still have to bring the person to court. But you're disobeying the order of a court of superior jurisdiction. And then you're telling us that this administration is going to be founded on the rule of law, is going to obey the rule of law. But EFCC is daily daily, hourly undermining the due process of the law, ridiculing the entire judiciary, trying to make the judiciary look incompetent, look impotent, by flagrantly disobeying the orders of the court. Now, they cherry pick which order they actually want to obey. The ones that favors them, they will quickly obey. They went to the magistrate court. The magistrate court gave them a remand order. I mean, that had, it was implemented with fiat. But when the Superior Court gave an order that this man be given bail, in fact, we're releasing him on bail, they flagrantly disobeyed. And they tried to undermine the entire judiciary by flying him to Lagos to start another process. If that is not impunity, I don't know what is.
But it is observed that similar overzealousness defines the operations of all security organs in the Buhari administration, as they have all been reported to engage in numerous forms of impunity, thereby exposing the government to a new wave of criticism and embarrassment from local and international organizations.
As we speak, my brother has never been charged to court. He has not been told that, look, these are your crimes, this is what you have committed, and these are your charges. So he's yet to be charged to court. He was detained in Abuja for almost 30 days, and they didn't charge him to court. The next thing they did was to take him to Lagos to continue his detention. If you've investigated somebody for a period of 30 days, you've detained somebody in your cell, you've had complete access to him for 30 days, and you didn't find anything to charge him with. And then because you knew that you had no grounds to continue detaining him in Abuja, you had to go to somewhere else. You had to go to another jurisdiction so that you can continue to detain him in perpetuity.
With the case of Azibaola Robert, the EFCC had come under an avalanche of criticism and accusations of downright impunity to gross incompetence.
If you can't charge somebody to court and get conviction, then you're unproductive. Your productivity should be measured based on how quickly you can investigate, how quickly you can charge, how quickly you can get conviction. Your productivity cannot be measured based on how many people you can clamp into detention and how many people you can clamp into detention ad infinitum. That is not productivity. That is not competency. That is incompetency. That is impunity. The AFCC is a closed wall of people who are interested in pleasing a certain personality. They want to be seen to be working, by putting people in detention without charge.
Suspects say they are subjected to indiscriminate procedures in detention far below globally acceptable standards.
Because this does not happen anywhere in a democracy, in a civilized democracy. Nobody is detained and then you start investigating. You detain somebody for 30 days, you are investigating. Where is it done? In normal crimes, you will have been thoroughly investigated before you are even arrested. When you are arrested, your charges are already ready for you. They are prepared to take you to court.
Some of such procedures are illegal and criminal in nature, as Dr. Faith describes.
So, hypothetically, EFCC can decide that, today, he was in Abuja. Now they've exhausted their sources here. They've taken him to Lagos. They'll detain him for 30 days in Lagos. And then when they exhaust that, they probably decide to take him to Port Harcourt to get another 30 days. And then from Port Harcourt, they might fly him to Warri or to Sokoto. So they can detain him in perpetuity, while going round and round from shopping, from where it is convenient to take him to. Does it make any rational sense to any rational being that you would detain somebody and take him from one place to the other just because you want to break him down, because you want him to manufacture evidence?
At this point, it has become obvious to the Robert family that there is no out-of-bound tactics beyond the EFCC in their shopping for evidence to nail their cousin, including the use of so-called truth drugs, capable of revealing hidden parts of the mind, used for extracting information from an incompliant source.
Based on the observations that I have seen on my brother, the physical observations that I have seen, it looks like my brother is undergoing serious torture, serious maltreatment, and he's been induced with drugs to say things to implicate people. He's not very coherent, and many a times it's incomprehensible, when he talks. I think he's been poisoned. He's been poisoned by drugs that could make him speak, to make him talk. And that has affected him tremendously.
With the failure of the courts against the almost absolute powers of the Economic Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, the only hopes left for Azibaola's freedom are through the organized civil society within the Nigerian and international publics. According to Dr. Faith Robert, the international community must remind the Commission that in a democratic system, the rule of law is sacrosanct, and disregarding the rule of law is setting the stage for lawlessness and anarchy.
I have sent letters to the Human Rights Commission. I have sent letters to the Amnesty International. I have sent letters to Human Rights Watch. I have sent letters to the United States Embassy. I have sent letters to the UK Embassy. I have sent letters to the European Union. If nobody speaks up and we encourage this level of impunity, then we are endangering our democracy. Men of conscience must speak up. Because if it happens to me now, it could happen to the next person tomorrow, and then by the time we succeed in silencing everybody, then that's dictatorship. So men of conscience and the international community must, as a matter of fact, inform this government that they must follow the due process of law. That is all I'm asking for.
Dr. Faith Robert says that all they want is for the Nigerian government to demonstrate an unquestionable process in its fight against corruption by allowing the law courts play their role in that process. The continued detention of Barrister Azibaola Robert, he says, is in clear breach of his constitutionally guaranteed liberty and fundamental rights.
I hope that my brother, because this is a democracy, and democracy is founded on the principles of rule of law. And anybody who offends is subjected to, to the legal process. If I have done something, irrespective of how severe my offense is, I should have my day in court, because you are presumed innocent until the court finds you guilty. So if my brother has done anything, okay, I hope that he be given a chance. Let him be charged with a crime that he's been accused of. Let the court, who is supposed to be an independent arbiter, be the one to pronounce him guilty or to pronounce him innocent. It is the responsibility of the courts, okay, to say that my brother has actually done wrong. My brother has actually, been found guilty of what he's been accused of. It is not the responsibility of EFCC to pronounce him guilty even before he's had his day in court. So I will want my brother to have his day in court so that he can prove, or his accusers can prove, that he's actually guilty, instead of subjecting him to this trauma, okay, on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. Let him have his day in court. Is that asking for too much? Is that asking for too much? Charge him to court. If you think he has done anything wrong, take him to court. Let the courts adjudicate on the matter. Any organization does not have the powers to be the accuser, to be the prosecutor, and the judge. This is a democracy. It's not a dictatorship. This is not a dictatorship. And we must uphold the tenets of democracy, okay, which promotes the separation of powers. The courts must have their independence. The court must be able to pronounce somebody guilty or somebody innocent. If EFCC is allowed to have so much powers to detain somebody without charge indefinitely, the foundation of our democracy is in danger. But if they don't have anything to charge him with, because he has not been charged with any crime, as it is right now as we speak, if they don't have anything to charge him with, then let him go.
You suppress strategies. You oppress, every part of me. What you don't know, you're a victim too, Mr. Jailer. You don't care about my point of view, and if I die